Welcome to episode 254 of the Working Fans Podcast, where today myself and the man called Dave are pre-recording. This is recorded last week to give us some time to record some commentary today. Before we talk to you about what we're going to get into today, we want to talk about our sponsor, Game Up. They are a great hard hydration drink. Comes in 4 great flavors. We've been talking about them for a while, but the season is here to enjoy them. You know the flavors. Dave, let them know what they are.
Oh man, we'd be talking about that fruit punch, we'd be talking about that orange, we talk about lemon lime, and we talk about Joe's favorite grape. All right. Only 110 calories. Don't feel guilty. Drink some Game Up.
They are so good. You're going to want to load up a cooler, fill it with some ice, and let them know that the Working Fans Podcast sent you. We've got a couple things we're going to talk about today, but Dave and myself were catching up before the episode, and Dave gave me like a real life question that I thought was interesting, and we'll get into it here.
Focus, baby. How do you keep it?
Well, give them kind of like the whole, because you presented it in a way like, how do you keep focus?
How do you keep your focus, and how do you stay present in high stressful situation? Whether you are a family man, you getting shit from the kids, whether you having trouble at your job and the boss is riding your ass, how do you keep that focus on what you want to accomplish, but also how do you just not lose it some days? How do you stay present in the moment, especially if you're somebody who has like a light switch reaction and it's a physical light switch reaction? How do you stay calm? I talked to a couple people before I talked to Joe, and someone had told me sleep was hugely important to them. Meditation was something that was important to them. I had another friend that mentioned therapy, that they had been doing therapy for a number of years, and they try to stay disciplined with working out and eating, a certain thing, and they have like a list that they have to accomplish every day. Otherwise, they get screwed. That's what they're doing, For me, I don't know. I just try to I'm such a take everything one day at a time. And sometimes I'm really good at it, and sometimes I stink at it.
I mean, obviously the first answer was weed, but after you get past weed and you get like a more functional answer, I told him, because it happened to me in real time last night at work, where shit's going on. It's a bad day, but it's getting worse. And I want to stay out of that frame because it's already been a tough week. I'm already in a down mood. I don't need anything else pulling me down. So what I do is I take myself out of the situation for a minute. For me, I just went on break. I stood outside, and it almost seems very simple, but I feel the breeze. I look, it was kind of close to sunset. So I look at the sky, pay attention to the clouds, listen to what's going on around me, try and get myself back to some baseline. Because when I know I'm walking into chaos, and I've always called it like just having a Vietnam mindset, that you're going in knowing that day's not going to be good. And if you accept that the day's not going to be good, that gives you kind of a baseline that you can deal with. So it's like everything's going bad. This is what we expected. There's nothing surprising here. But if things go well, then it's an added bonus. But if you're in that moment, I just go outside, kind of take myself. I guess it's like a mild meditation, but it's just taking yourself out of the situation, just getting a clear head and, getting back in there and handling it in the best way possible. Because a lot of times in life, you have choices with how you can handle things. You can handle it how you're feeling. You can handle it in a good way. You could handle it in a destructive way. And it's just, is it worth making a fight over? Is it worth combating this? Or is it worth even trying to make it better, or do you just ride it out? So it's kind of assessing the situation, seeing what it needs from you, and responding accordingly.
Almost reminds me of pro wrestling, to draw the connection to the heel, where he would run outside for a breather when someone was firing to come back, and the commentators said he's creating his timeout. Like you're creating your own timeout in that situation.
Yeah, because especially if you have that light switch, just automatic response, sometimes you need that minute, because if you don't have that minute and you're just expected to respond, chances are it might not go well. Maybe you've been doing some work and you've been able to adjust it, but sometimes you just get that visceral reaction that you don't even really necessarily want to or mean to give, but it comes out.
Yeah, it depends on what your triggers are too. Certain people's triggers are a little different. I know mine are a little different. Like I can speak of it, like I've been in high stressful situations that I performed very well at. But if I'm working with people, say that are, and I probably a lot of people have this problem, but that are belligerent or, lack of better bullies, and they'll talk down. Like I have far, far, far less of a tolerance for that at this point in my life. Maybe I should, maybe I shouldn't have that tolerance. You know what I mean? But there is probably a better way to deal with those people sometimes too.
Especially in a work situation, because at work you're kind of all working for the same thing. So
Mhm.
if somebody's being a bully or somebody, I don't know how to put it, I guess taking advantage of others' time,
Yeah.
maybe doing less so others do more. And it's kind of that thing where it's like, I don't like not giving 100%. Even give 100% of what you've got, even if it's not great. If you are trying, that's what's important. It's rough when you see somebody not trying or just, kind of dragging their feet, just to get into the weeds of it. But yeah, it's really tough to keep that center and be present. And
Yeah.
I mean, who would have guessed in 2024 that the Working Fans podcast would be talking about being present?
Being present. All right.
One thing that we were present for was another one of those great shorts that Dave created where talked about who had the better career, Vader or Stan Hansen. Very likely he picked this because of the match where Stan Hansen popped Vader's eye out of his
Mhm.
head. These two have been linked throughout history. They are also big men, brawlers, have
Yeah.
had matches in the US, have had matches in Japan, and it's time to get into who had the better career.
I mean, for me, it's Vader because of the national level in the States, because he was very successful in Japan, much like Stan. Vader was able to be champion in New Japan and All Japan. Hansen, I would say, had much more of that longevity. And it's not, you can dismiss. Hansen was a star in the US as well, AWA heavyweight champion back in the day. But, Vader didn't have the greatest run in WWE, but he still got the headline and main event of SummerSlam with Shawn Michaels. So he still had some success there. And then he had his WCW run where he was world champion on 3 occasions, I believe. His great feud with Sting, where, he got to beat Sting as a heel clean, at different times. His legendary feud with Mick Foley, which was just known for, just a barbaric nature, which they beat the hell out of each other. So for me, even though I kind of might like Hansen a little better, and I think Hansen's probably more of a badass, not to say that Vader isn't, I just lean towards Hansen. If I'm talking about career overall, I give the slight nod to Vader.
I'm glad you said longevity because when I was trying to think about who had the better career, obviously you want to go to Vader because of the run he had in the States. Did have some Japanese exposure, but I think was a bigger deal over here.
Mhm.
And I'm going to disagree with you, Dave. I'm going to say it was Hansen because he had his run in the States. I would argue was able to elongate his career in Japan, was notable over there, but also had runs over here, broke Bruno Sammartino's neck, had that AWA championship, but then was also known for teaming with Brody in Japan, was known for just being that badass.
Yeah.
And, like, it's funny because you're talking about like the American side of Vader's career, making him, I would argue that the Japanese side of Hansen's career kind of propelled him.
I think the Bruno thing is an interesting point you brought up because I tend to forget that because that was in the 70s. That was a really huge deal for what it was at the time. But I mean, on the flip side of it, too, Vader's one of the few people who beat Inoki clean, too, in Japan. So, I mean, Vader's definitely had a lot of success, yeah, in Japan.
Yeah, you could tell who forgot about that sitting out in the sun this morning.
Uh-huh.
And
You
that's a
forgot
bigger
Inoki.
deal. Like that tips the scales because okay, yeah, it's Vader. Because even if Hansen was big in Japan, it's not like he got that dominant win to establish him
Mhm.
and it didn't cause a riot. He might have been big for years,
Yeah.
but beating Inoki, that's a special moment that's not given to everybody and will
Right.
make a career.
For sure. So yeah, it's kind of funny that you are by far more into Japanese wrestling and know more about Japanese wrestling, but it is funny that you remembered San Martino and I remembered Inoki.
Well, it's funny because I think we were both trying, like, at least I was trying to look at it from different angles and see how could Hanson be looked at as bigger.
Yeah. I mean, again,
Because I mean,
two great careers at the end of the day, though.
oh yeah, both huge names in wrestling and a segment I've been trying to get over for a couple weeks here now. We've been ending shows with it. We've been reading the mailbag from old wrestling magazines, and
It's 80.
I had a couple letters that I wanted to read because it fits into something that Dave very much enjoys.
Is this 89?
We've talked about it here on the show, but when I opened the magazine right now, I'm gonna read the first letter I saw. Inoki elected. Wrestlers are wrestlers, politicians are politicians. I'm not saying one is better than the other, just that I wouldn't want to see President Bush wrestle, nor would I want to see Hulk Hogan run for president. My point is that the people of Japan should get their priorities straight. Antonio Inoki in the Japanese House of Counselors, I demand a recount. Chuck Bausner, Mexico, New York.
So this is 89, or this might be 90 actually.
100%, 1990.
Yeah. I saw that picture of woman on the magazine and the picture of Savage, and I'm like, woman, like that look was WCW. So that could have been 89 or 90. But then that thing when you said President Bush, I thought, okay, this is 90.
That's the first one too. And
Yeah.
Dave, the reason I chose these couple letters, and we're going to do a couple because it relates to something Dave has talked about multiple times here. He, back when we were trying out new segments, even did a segment about this. Readers in a funk. Shame on you for giving Terry Funk valuable space to spread his sick views. Sports Review interview, Terry Funk, November 89. Funk is a sick man for what he did to Flair, and he should be in jail, not in your magazine. I can understand that every man has a right to speak his mind, but Funk sacrificed that right when he committed a crime on national TV. Kevin Kennedy, South Bend, Indiana. And that was the famous match that we covered, the New York Knockout, I believe it is.
Well,
and everything leading up to it.
New York Knockout would have been the finale of that, the I Quit match. So if he's talking about the crime, it's one of two things. It's the beginning, which was the attack after Flair won the title from Steamboat, where Funk power drived them through a table and assaulted him. But there was another incident where Funk had to actually go on TV, I think, and apologize, where he wrapped a plastic bag around Ric Flair's head and attempted to suffocate him on a Clash of the Champions. That could also be what he's talking about.
Very much true. Now, the next letter. I couldn't believe my eyes when I turned to the interview in the November 89 issue. Funk says that by trying to end Flair's career, it established me again. Well, crippling a man is quite a way to reestablish your career. It's sick, it's selfish, and it's criminal. Whenever I see Funk's ugly face, I just want to puke. Do us a favor. Keep Funk out of your otherwise great magazines. Ken Fredericks, Gloucester, New Jersey. Isn't it funny that in the time, Funk could be so hated, and now we look back at him as this legend and really miss him since he's passed?
I really just have the feeling that these these letters are worked, but I would say that. But then I do know a guy who's in our inner circle, who's a friend, who wrote to these PWI magazines when he was a kid, and he got his letter printed. So what's a work, what's not a work on these, I don't know. But some of these just, I don't know. It sounds like, hey guys, I'm working on this character and being a heel. You think you could drum up some hate mail for me? You know?
And it's funny because there's a part of me that wants to believe like the articles and the interviews in wrestling magazines are fake, but the mailbags are real. So maybe I'm getting worked, but I enjoy going back and looking at the things that get printed in these magazines, especially from fans, because if we're going on the assumption that it's real, just the hate and the feeling that people put into these wrestling things is kind of hilarious.
It is. I enjoy
it. Like, let's take it to a modern example. I was talking about the new Chris Jericho persona the other day, and I was telling the guy that I was talking to, I'm like, I really hate it. And I'm like, I don't know if it's because as a viewer, I'm responding to what Jericho wants, or do I just hate it because I think it's lame? And I think it's 50-50 because I'm not amused by it a ton.
I thought about this one too.
The whole point is to get you to hate him.
Right. I thought about this too. I thought he's like super disingenuous, obnoxious. I totally get it. That's heel 101. And he's delivering it. I feel like his delivery is fine, but I'm just not connected with it still. You know, like I totally get what you're doing. I feel like if somebody else was doing this, I'd find it funny. I just think for me, and people are not going to maybe like this, some people, but I feel like we talked about in another episode we did about Ricochet going to possibly AEW, and you talked about that. And I thought what fresh matchups and everything, you know, and stuff like that. I feel Jericho is just so oversaturated in AEW right now. That as much as he reinvents himself, I just can't get into anything he does right now. I don't know what he's going to do. I would rather see Jericho, if he doesn't want to retire, either go back to WWE on like a Legends tour or start doing some indies and do some of that and recreate yourself out there. Because I feel like everything in AEW right now, he's just not connected with.
Yeah, and the guy that I was talking to said he's still a Jericho fan. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I've liked Jericho forever, but this is pushing my limits.
Mhm.
I'm like, I could see him as being like maybe a solid manager that gets into the ring from time to time. You know, let it breathe a little bit. You don't have to be out there all the time, but
The only
nature
thing
of the
I like
beast,
is
you
that-
want to be in front of that camera, right?
The only thing I like in that gimmick is Brian Keefe, the bad apple, because I feel like Big Bill is actually just doing exactly what Jericho's doing, which I get is the point. But again, I don't care. I don't connect with me. Whereas Brian Keefe is the only one who's just like, you will respect Chris Jericho and your lame ass corn, or whatever he's saying. It's just so funny to me because it's like out of his character. And I'm like, oh, but again, what's the big difference? To me, he feels fresh. He feels different.
Guys, since Clash at the Castle was last week, but in real time, it hasn't occurred for us yet. On episode 255, we will review Clash at the Castle, talk more WCW. We will find another short to discuss in longer form, and we will also dig out some Game Up. If you haven't tried Game Up, then you are missing out. Imagine your favorite seltzer and your favorite sports drink had a baby, but it's way better than that. Each can is 110 calories, low carb, 4.9 ABV. It's a nice light drink that is not light on flavor. Game Up comes in fruit punch, orange, lemon, lime, and grape. Pick it up at drinkgameup.com or at your nearest liquor store. And if you're enjoying some Game Up, I just messed up the name, and want to enjoy a great story while you're getting lit, check out Wrestle Black Bart.
All you goddamn wrestling fans out there, listen, Old Black Bart has got a book. It's called Wrestle Black Bart. It's got some dadgum good stories in there about some dadgum good wrestlers.
Read stories of Dusty Rhodes, the Von Erichs, Scott Casey, Sergeant Slaughter, Roddy Piper, Mr. Fuji, Ron Bass, Bruiser Brody, Mike Davis, the Grappler, and many others.
And I guarantee you one thing, that it'll be the best dadgum read you've had in a long, long time.
Get your book today at Russellville.com or on Amazon. Russellville, it's where wrestling lives.
Read about the Northern Wrestling Federation in the book presented by Russellville.com, The Pro Wrestling Vault, Volume 2. Hear the story of Roger Ruffin, the man who trained Carl Anderson, the Monster Abyss, Jordan Clearwater, Chris Harris, and Jillian Hall.
Plus 45 other short stories including Jazz, Bobby Eaton, Kamala, Thunder Rosa, Mario Mancini, Scott Casey, PJ Black, Kerry Morton, Sal Renaro, Jeremiah Plunkett, Colby Carino, Bam Bam Malone, and many others.
Get your book today at Russellville.com. Russellville, it's where wrestling lives.